Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another CPC Strategy hosted webinar. Today's topic is 5 powerful audience segments for your AdWords remarketing strategy. And today we're co-hosted with our friends over at Zaius, and really looking forward to bringing you today's presentation because it kind of marries two of the things that we've been talking about for a while now, which is obviously just ways to optimize your AdWords strategy, but also just being efficient with your budget. And I know Jason is going to go into this in a little bit here, as well as Eric, and remarketing is really one of the best ways to do so. So again, looking forward to bringing you today's presentation. But before we did get any further along down today's presentation, wanted to just cover some logistics, some questions that we get every now and then, and wanted to make sure that everything was set in stone prior to just getting things rolling together with the content. So a question that we receive fairly often is the session recording and the slides. And we will send both the recording and the slides out to you to the email that you registered in. So if there's a slide that maybe we move too quickly on, or maybe there are just a lot of notes and statistics that you want to reference again, you should receive that in your inbox within 48 hours. Secondly, did want to ask you to check the handout section to your right. We do have great PDF files, whether they're studies, guidebooks, and resources available to you just for spending time with us today, and also just want to make sure that you're getting the most out of your time here. So whether it's how to implement ISO strategy, just creating nurture tracks, or I know that Zaius has included a really great resource for e-commerce campaign as well. Again, all in the handout section, and we'll be referencing those throughout the presentation. But again, just a resource for you. Lastly, and most importantly, as always, would love for you to submit questions to our panelists. The questions really help us to gauge what is the content that we should be focusing most on, and maybe there's something that we speak at a high level, but you want a question answered a little bit more specifically. Feel free to shoot that over to our panelists in the question chat box functionality, and I'll be on the back end just monitoring those questions and pitching them over to our panelists. But again, can't stress that enough. This is your opportunity to get your questions answered from our experts here today, and want to really increase that interaction between both the speakers and you and the audience. So again, can't stress this enough. The question box functionality, feel free to use that throughout the presentation and at the end during the live Q&A section as well. Before we do get started, did want to introduce CPC Strategy and who we are. We were founded in 2007, and I believe now we have around 500 plus active retail clients, and we are a Google Premier partner. And you'll see kind of in the solutions tab, we have solutions spanning retail-focused PPC and shopping on the Google side, Amazon sales acceleration, Facebook performance marketing, as well as creative services. And we've just been able to deliver a lot of lasting results for our clients, whether the Pranas or the Nescafes of the world, and really just proud of that. And so again, going to be more focused on the PPC and shopping side for this presentation, and you'll see again shopping management, paid search management, just a few of the solutions that we offer here at CPC. But like I said, we are not the only people speaking today. We have our partners over at Zaius. So did want to pitch it over to Eric. Eric, why don't you tell us a little bit about who Zaius is and what you all do?
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot, Anson. So Zaius has been in market for a little over 2 years, almost 3 years now. We go to market as a B2C CRM, and the reason we do that is we identified a big gap between ownership of data, customer data, product catalog, et cetera, and the ability to execute campaigns. And those were typically in 2 systems, and the fact that they were so fragmented caused a lot of pain for the modern marketer. So we brought those 2 systems together, unified customer data across channels and devices, put that in the hands of the marketer in a marketing platform, all in one. And recently raised a $30 million Series B round. So pretty exciting times over here, and definitely looking forward to talking about segmentation today.
Yeah, great. Thanks for introducing Zaius, Eric, and wanted to just throw it back to you, actually, Eric. We do have our speakers, both Eric Keating, VP of Marketing at Zaius, as well as Jason Bell, who, if you are a CPC webinar regular, should not be anything new to you. Jason has done a lot of webinars with us in the past, a senior retail search manager at CPC Strategy. So, Eric, wanted to turn it over to you first. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah, I'll keep it super brief. Even though I'm in marketing, I'm not a big self-promoter. So, I guess in summary, my career has really been spent in data-centric MarTech solutions. So, no stranger to concepts like behavioral data or segmentation, personalization based on data, these types of things. So, we work primarily with B2C companies. So, a lot of my expertise is there, but over my career, I've worked with both B2B and B2C. So, happy to field questions on either side.
Yeah,
Awesome.
great. And wanted to turn it over to Jason as well. Jason, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Anson. As he said, if you guys are CPC webinar frequenters, then welcome back. And it's you probably heard from me before, so I'm happy to be here again. Just a little background on me. Obviously, I've been with CPC for I'm losing count now, maybe about seven years, I want to say now. So it's been quite a while. Hopefully, obviously the ride continues. So I'm the guy that's in the weeds every day, working with clients in and out of AdWords, Facebook, all the stuff that we offer. So hopefully I'll be able to provide a little bit of expertise from that point of view today. And so I'm happy to have Eric here, and I'm excited to get started.
Yeah, definitely. And I will say that Jason is being modest and definitely is an expert in what we'll be speaking towards today in remarketing and AdWords, and as well on Eric's side. So great to have these two speakers really experienced in what we'll be talking to. And so really just wanted to hop into today's agenda. Again, keeping it in the first section pretty high level, just remarketing options available in Google AdWords to you as an advertiser. And Jason will be going through the 6 different advertising options. And then Eric will really be going into audience segmentation using first-party data, and then tying that into 5 really powerful audience segments that you should be looking to target in your remarketing strategy. And so I know that is going to be a hot topic there. And lastly, we'll be rounding it out with Jason talking about just common mistakes that we see, things that we see clients doing in the remarketing strategy that or not doing in their remarketing strategy that they should be. And so again, it's going to be a really great 40 minutes here for our presentation, and again, leaving time for Q&A at the end. So before we do get started and I pass things over to Jason, again, I do see a few questions coming in on the question box functionality, but if something is unclear, or if you have a question you'd like us to answer, would like to again say that it is all open for you to just ask us some questions throughout. So with that being said, Jason, I will turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Anson. So as Anson mentioned, we're going to start here today with just the different remarketing options available within, and this is going to be AdWords specific, and things that we, again, deal with on day-to-day basis. And using some of the segmentation that Eric's going to be talking about later, we implement them here within the options in AdWords. But to start, I want to talk about why we should remarket. And we've really tried to boil this down to 6 main reasons to implement remarketing. One being increased reach, and that's not necessarily increasing reach to, like, say, new customers, because obviously we're remarketing to customers who or people who've been to our site before, but it's more of increased reach on different areas outside of, say, AdWords search on the SERP page, or through shopping, or Facebook, things like that. This is just another area and way through the GDN to increase your reach to current customers or customers who have maybe completed a certain action on site. And that's what remarketing allows us to do. And with that, usually we do see lower CPC, so that's obviously a benefit. With that benefit, there is obviously some areas where we kind of see some downsides as well in terms of CTR. If you're talking about in relation to, say, text ads or shopping, CTR obviously can be a little lower, as well as conversion rate, but it's just the sheer amount of volume that you're getting. And at the end of the day, it's going to depend on what types of campaigns you're running, what assets you have, and really what your strategy is. But again, lower CPC is definitely a great benefit in terms of, the actual traffic to cost that you're going to be incurring through a remarketing type of effort. More granular advertising strategy. So again, using these audience lists that Eric will be talking about a little bit later, you'll be able to get more granular in terms of who you're targeting, and just overall your strategy is going to get a lot more granular and more I guess precise in terms of okay, you're targeting a cart abandoner in a certain time frame, or someone who's looked at a product page, things like that. Even more granular in many senses. So again, more granular advertising strategy, the ability to move prospects down the purchase funnel. So remarketing, again, you're re-engaging with users who've completed an action on your site or been to your site in the past. And so many times we will see that people will maybe come through on a non-branded text ad campaign. Then they'll get hit with, say, one of our remarketing campaigns. Then they may go to something a little more down the funnel with maybe a shopping campaign, but they cart abandon. Then we'll hit them again with a cart abandon remarketing campaign that's maybe a little bit more aggressive, maybe has different messaging, and we've successfully moved them down the purchase funnel, and hopefully that remarketing campaign at the end there we'll be able to finish the job off if we weren't able to get them to convert previously in that purchase funnel. Maximizing budget. So again, using your budget, excuse me, using your budget to more efficiently in terms of there's many options for us on remarketing side in terms of maybe we want to do something that's a little more open where we're opening up to all users on our site, but with the options to only target specific users and specific actions and engagement on the site, we're able to really focus in and maximize our budget to certain areas. So this is definitely useful for budget conscious customers, advertisers, clients as well, to be able to maximize your budget using remarketing lists and overall remarketing campaigns. And then lastly, increase the conversion rate. So increasing your conversion rate on these users, again, remarketing to them, getting them back and trying to open up that conversion rate via that customer. Cool. So I want to go through with the actual options now. Funnily enough, we have about 6 options here as well. We didn't really plan that for the previous slide where we had kind of 6 points, but what I want to start with, and I'm going to go through these real quickly, and then I'm going to go through, there's definitely some of them here that I'm talking through that I'm going to go through a little more detail. Others that I'm going to, really a little bit more niche, but the ones I want to go over are standard remarketing, dynamic remarketing, remarketing specifically for mobile apps, remarketing lists for search ads or RLSAs, video remarketing, and then email list remarketing. And to start off, just here with the standard remarketing. So if you're interested in getting into remarketing, it's very easy to get started in remarketing as long as you're able to have remarketing lists. You do obviously have an AdWords account. Now, basically, when I say standard remarketing, this is basically just showing static ads, banner ads, most typically, to past visitors on websites, apps, Google Display Network. And again, it's very simple. It's very easy to manage. All you really need to do is be able to have some of those static display assets. So obviously some banners. There is the option to use what's called a responsive ad, which is a little newer within AdWords. So that will allow you to take care of some of the, maybe if you have asset issues in terms of having banner ads created, there is that option. But at the end of the day, it's really just creating a campaign for the GDN using remarketing list targeting or RLSAs, like just actual audience list, excuse me, and then marrying that with display banner ads and pushing, obviously traffic to that. It's very easy, simple to set up, and even easy to manage. If I had to give a recommendation here for people who are a little more savvy in terms of what it looks like to set one of these up, definitely try to set up different, I'd say usually ad groups per the audience list. What that will allow you to do is see performance per those and adjust bids on them a lot more quickly rather than having one ad group, for example, and then all your audience lists live in that audience list tab. Second, I want to go into dynamic remarketing. This allows you to show tailored remarketing ads for content or products to people who've previously visited. If I had to say if you had to choose one type of remarketing, I definitely say using dynamic remarketing. If you have a feed available, that's obviously key. If you have a feed and products available, dynamic remarketing is great because it actually will scale with the products and services that you offer. They do have high performance layouts. I will admit some of the layouts that you can create within Google, some of them aren't the prettiest, but there's definitely some that see really good click-through rates, even conversion rates and engagement rates. And you even have the option to allow Google to shift through all of those. And then once they find one that works the best, they'll start to serve that. But really the main meat and potatoes here is that it customizes the look and the feel for each user. So each ad and each user will show potentially a different product or a different service based on what they've looked at in the past and things that are related. So typically, this is one that I just kind of on the onset, I'd recommend running both a standard remarketing and a dynamic remarketing campaign together. But what we usually see is that dynamic remarketing will have a better CTR, will have a better conversion rate, and usually lower CPCs. So again, it's all going to depend on what you're offering. But if you have to choose one, dynamic remarketing is probably the area that I'd recommend that you get started with from a remarketing standpoint within AdWords. And this is just a little bit of an example. So again, if you look at here, this is Anson's LinkedIn page, and you can see here at the top right, there's an ad for Prana. In this case, it's really only showing one product. Usually, I think the other product right now is was removed, so we can show that it was added to cart. But this is a product that Anson had added to cart in the past and abandoned. So he was served up that product, and then there was a product next to it originally, and it was very obviously targeted to him in a product that he actually looked at, and in an area, obviously very visible for him to take a look at, be reminded enough that he obviously took a screenshot for us, and was able to, it was successful remarketing here in terms of the product that showed up. It shows the price. It's more bottom of the funnel. And then getting him, hopefully what he did was he added it to cart, and he ended up purchasing from them. But at the end of the day, what you'll need for these dynamic remarketing campaigns is a product feed. So obviously that's very important. Without a product feed, you're not going to have any products that show up. You really can't do dynamic remarketing without it. It simply won't let you. You need the remarketing tag on site with custom parameters so that Google knows what IDs in the feed to match up with product pages. And then product focused audience list is definitely something I'd recommend. So people who've looked at certain products in a given time frame, people who have cart abandoned, obviously that's always a big one, so that we can remarket to them in a similar fashion here as Prana did with a particular product that he had looked at in the past.
Yeah, and before we do go on, Jason, I
Yeah.
actually do have a question here from Charlie, and I know that you mentioned it pretty
Yeah.
briefly, but I believe you said that dynamic remarketing, when you're running it side by side with standard remarketing, typically is going to have a lower CPC than standard remarketing.
Correct. We usually see lower CPCs. Again, it will matter on your bid. So if you're pushing sky high bids, then you'll probably see higher CPCs. But usually, if you're running them concurrent with a standard remarketing campaign, you'll usually see lower CPCs there, higher CTRs, and higher conversion rates. You typically is one of our better performing, or if not best performing, remarketing campaigns within AdWords for most clients.
Great. Yeah, hopefully we were able to provide some clarification there. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, no problem. And then moving on, I want to talk a little bit about remarketing lists for mobile apps. Again, this is a little more niche, and it obviously doesn't apply to everyone, but it does allow you to show ads to past visitors of either your mobile app, users of your app, or even mobile website. So you can use your marketing list to recapture downloads of your app. Maybe you want to remind someone that they want to take a specific action on the app. Increase the frequency of use of the app, so trying to keep them to come back and using your app, or even recommend new features. So being able to understand and create lists of people who are using your current app, and then to push again them to use the app even further. If again, I think one of the main ones here is like new features. Maybe you add something that your audience has been requesting and you have it. You want to make sure everyone understands that's going on and that you've opened that up for them. Using a remarketing list for mobile app is definitely a good option for you if you want to get that point across. Again, a little more niche, so this definitely does not apply to everybody. This one should apply to everybody. So this isn't technically a remarketing like campaign. It's more of an audience option, and you can use this on all your search ad campaigns, including shopping. So this is a remarketing list for search ads, or RLSAs, and this is something we've actually worked a lot with Google. Again, if you guys aren't aware, we're Google Premier partners, so we work with Google quite often on some of our accounts. And so this is something that we've kind of harped on and pushed very aggressively over the past year, and seen some really great results. So customizing your search ads for campaigns. So again, search ads, so your text ad campaigns, your shopping ads for people who've previously visited your site. There is two options here. So you can set up a target and bid, so meaning you're only targeting, say, a shopping campaign for people who've visited your site before, or maybe only for cart abandoners. Or you can have a bid only, which is probably the one I use most often, where we're adjusting our bid percentages on users who fit a certain audience list. And you can kind of see that in the screenshot here at the bottom right, where we have different audience lists that are applied to one single campaign currently, and we have different bid adjustment percentages. And one thing I don't really talk too much about later, but one mistake I see with RLSAs is people don't get aggressive enough. Now, obviously, I don't recommend just putting lists and then going crazy bidding like 300% right away. But certain lists, especially if you notice in this example here, the fourth one down, so our cart abandonment in the past 3 days, that's a list that we push 250%, bid adjustment upwards on. Now, this doesn't mean that your average CPC is going to go up 250%, but it means that you're willing to pay obviously up to 250% on your current product that's in the auction, or keyword that's in the auction for these users. And as you can see from a conversion rate standpoint, that is the highest converting set of users at 29% when we compare it to the others here. And CTR through the roof as well, 22%. So we want to make sure that people who are on that list and doing searches on Google Shopping or search are being hit with our ads more often. That's basically what RLSAs do. Again, why should you use RLSAs? Easy first step to introduce higher or even lower bid adjustments for some of your past visitors. It's a really quick setup. Literally, if you have audience lists created, and if you don't, definitely create them today after this webinar, and then just add them to some of your campaigns. And I go in a little bit later, but I want to just say it right now, is when you add them, make sure you understand that if you're adding them as a bid only, which you can see here in the third column, or target and bid. In the AdWords editor, it's a little different. It's observation or targeting. So observation would be the one you want if you only want to adjust your bids, but still open up targeting to everyone, whether they're on a list or not. Thirdly, it allows higher bids for higher intent customers. Again, the cart abandonment example here. And then lastly, custom messaging. So this is optional because it's really only available if you are target and bidding, or really if you're on text ads, you can also create a little more ads that will adjust based on what the user is, but that's a little more advanced. But in terms of a campaign that you want to do target and bid, you can actually target and bid, say again, cart abandonment with specific messaging within those ads, and then you obviously just exclude that audience from your non-remarketing text campaign. But it definitely gives you that option as well, which is great and something that we've used to great success in the past. So if you guys don't kind of get the picture, definitely use this. RLSAs are huge. Definitely recommend if you're not doing them today, take a look. You don't even have to add bids to them at all. You can just add them to your campaign and just see what your audiences are doing. And then from there, obviously adjust based on the data that you collect. Moving forward, video remarketing. Again, this is a little niche as well. So if you have video assets, so again, like kind of the mobile app remarketing, but there is video marketing available where you can actually create remarketing lists based on people who viewed your videos. Which is great if you do have video content and you're really pushing that. This allows you to appeal more to mobile users. There's obviously a lot of us, me included, that are on our phones. I'm watching videos more often than not. And so being able to appeal more to a lot of users who are mobile, people who are maybe potentially passive buyers, so they're not as active in terms of searching for your products and whatnot, but they do engage in your content and your video content. So being able to create remarketing lists based off that. And then obviously when you're actually doing the remarketing, showcasing your brand, a lot, as we know, a lot of us, video is used mostly right now for brand awareness and brand building. But there's definitely ways through remarketing and other kind of programmatic that you can make video work from a more direct conversion standpoint. So video remarketing is definitely, if you do have video assets, something I'd recommend that you guys take a look at. And last but not least, email list remarketing. So this is something that we've done a lot more recently as well. And I'd recommend combining that with RLSAs that you can kind of see as my second point here. But this is basically allows you to serve targeted ads to email lists that you upload. So email customers who you have their email list for. It allows you to prioritize customers with high intent or engagement levels. Again, just as you would do with normal audience lists, if you have the capability and you are willing to upload your emails into AdWords, segmenting them by maybe engagement rates or different actions that they've done on site. Definitely recommend that. And then you can combine them with RLSAs to re-engage your previous customers, or whatever they happen to do, email blast engagement, or whether they've even unsubscribed. That's actually one that I've seen great success with, people who have unsubscribed from our email content or content in general, and then we re-engage them via remarketing. We've actually seen great success from that, which was surprising at first. So it's awesome to see that. So I definitely recommend looking into that. Now, when I'm talking about all these six, obviously the mobile app and the video remarketing are all a little bit nuanced. It will depend on kind of what assets you have and what you're doing, but every single one of the other ones, so standard remarketing, dynamic remarketing, RLSAs and email lists. So 4 out of the 6, I would recommend everyone who has a budget and capability to do so start testing these out today even, because you can see some really good performance improvements on your campaigns by using remarketing lists and audience lists.
Yeah, and Jason, I feel like you might have mentioned this kind of just in how in depth you talked about each of the 6. But if you had to kind of say, hey, you need to implement one of these 6 today, I feel like you're leaning either more towards dynamic remarketing or RLSAs. Can you provide just a little bit more insight into that?
Yeah, to be honest, I'd say both. But actually, even though dynamic remarketing is easy to set up as well, if you have a product feed, RLSAs are probably even easier. You literally just add the audience list to your campaign. And then obviously, if you don't have audience lists created yet, then definitely create those and start to take a look. And it'll take some time for those lists to populate. But RLSAs are something I'd recommend you do right away, at least adding them to your campaigns. And then if you have a feed, dynamic remarketing is going to be an actual campaign in itself, whereas RLSAs are what you can add to all your current campaigns in terms of search and shopping. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks.
Cool. So again, as Anson mentioned, and kind of what that question was alluding to, dynamic remarketing, RLSAs, those are probably the 2 I'd recommend right away you guys get involved in, and email lists as well. If you have a large email list set up and you're willing to upload them to Google, we see some great results, and that kind of can marry in with the RLSAs when you're doing email list remarketing. Cool. So I do want to pass it off over to Eric, and he's going to kind of go into first-party data, augment segmentation, and really kind of I think the meat and the exciting part of the presentation today. So Eric, without further ado, you can go ahead and kick it off.
I'm glad to hear this is the exciting part. Yeah, the last thing you talked about there, email list remarketing, that's really, I think, the closest to the first-party data segmentation, which I'll be talking about. So that's a nice transition. Let's make sure my click here works.
Not working there.
Yeah. Giving it a second. All right, so it seemed to work, just pretty delayed, so I think it will speed up. So, so first and foremost, I like to think that most, if not all, marketers are doing at least some kind of basic segmentation of their customers and prospects. I'm often disappointed, but excited about the massive opportunity in front of any business that's already seeing success without a segmentation strategy. To reset here, segmentation is the practice of dividing your audience into groups based on things like interests and demographics, et cetera. And it's important because, especially now with how much competition there is out there, companies really can't afford to be treating every customer the same way like they used to. Customer expectations are way too high. They've just got way too many choices to be shopping with companies who aren't prioritizing making it super easy to buy from them. Something to remember is that segmentation is really only as good as your data. It's all based on data. So it should really go without saying that unless your data is accurate and complete, segmentation could actually have the opposite effect of what you want. So you don't want to be, for example, marketing to a loyal customer like they just started shopping with you, right? So just really making sure you've got a great foundation of data to work with. So before we dive in, please make sure you're working with a solid data set. And part of that is consolidating your customer data. So what does that mean? How do you do that? It means making sure that your data includes deep historical data, so years of activity, that it's constantly updated and maintained, and whenever possible, ensuring that it takes into account consumers' activity across devices and marketing channels. This is really the biggest hindrance that we see to completing a great data set, because what we've found is that the average consumer has over 6 different identities across mobile, desktop, email, social, etc. So if you're unable to connect those dots, you're really working with a suboptimal set of data. This is a bit advanced. If you're not quite here yet, don't worry. Segmentation is still important. You should still do it, but make sure that you're doing your research on identity resolution. It's never been more important with the number of devices and marketing channels that exist today. And then lastly, when you're approaching segmentation, you really want to do it in a dynamic way. So we call it dynamic segmentation, but what this means is like really whenever possible, and this is usually a technology question, but you want your segments to be dynamic, meaning they're set up in a way that people move in and out of your segments in real time as they qualify or disqualify for them. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a segment of customers who made one purchase. As you can imagine, that can get stale pretty quickly, especially in B2C with the high velocity purchases. But when a new shopper makes their first purchase, they should automatically be added to that segment, especially if you have campaigns, whether it's in Google or elsewhere, that are triggered off of segment inclusion. And when a one-time buyer makes their second purchase, they should be removed. So that's essentially what dynamic segmentation is. Really important, especially if you're like I said, triggering campaigns based off of segments. So now I'll show how all this can be applied in practice. So I'll walk through 5 different approaches to audience segmentation. And I know Jason talked a lot about how powerful Google can be. And certainly you should be passing your segments over to Google. We encourage it, all of our customers do, using the customer match capabilities there. They make it super easy to automate that process. But our customers are really using segments to target everything from Google and Facebook ads to emails, push messaging, and even on-site content. So when I'm talking through these segments, don't limit your thinking just to Google. Super important for Google, but segments can really power pretty much everything you do, all the way down to reporting, right? Mm-hmm. So first, I'll talk about abandonment segments. I know Jason covered this a little bit, but when abandonment's really most often categorized in 2 ways. So cart abandonment and browse abandonment being the most popular. Cart abandonment being those who have added a product to a cart but didn't ultimately purchase. Browse abandonment being similar, except it's more that they were browsing a product but didn't add it to their cart. But in either example, you've got great data here about their interests, and you should be using that to target them. Basic example is serving abandoners an ad that features a discount code or offer for free shipping, right? There's got to be a reason why they started shopping and didn't complete it. A lot of times it's price or shipping costs, etc. So if you're going to go broad with this, definitely give it a shot with a discount or a free shipping offer. A more advanced example, especially if you have the capabilities in your messaging, like email, etc., is targeting them with the exact products, brands, or product categories that they showed interest in.
Yeah, and Eric, this is a great example here with the image on the right. This kind of marries what I was mentioning earlier around a targeted bid, say, search campaign that will retarget these users who, again, cart or browse abandonment with a promo code like this. So if they fit that list and they fit the bill and they do a search that triggers an ad, it will serve them, for example, this promo code, these details, rather than what our normal evergreen ad copy for a non-cart abandonment user would receive.
Great, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Next we're going to talk about lifecycle segments. Lifecycle segments can be one of the most straightforward, but also most powerful approaches to audience segmentation. Think about segmenting your shoppers into those who may have given you their email address but haven't made a purchase, those who have made 1 or 2 purchases, loyal customers, and customers who are at risk or have churned, and we'll talk about that last subset in a couple minutes. But it should be obvious that you really don't want to be treating your new shoppers the same way as your loyal shoppers, so that's a great place to start. Simple campaign you can run, especially as it pertains to Google and retargeting. One of our favorites is to grab your segment of loyal customers, and you can start at that level. You can also go a lot deeper, but grab your segment of loyal customers, put it into Google. So you hopefully have the email addresses of your most loyal customers. I think that's fairly assumed. But then use their lookalike capabilities to drive acquisition of likely higher value shoppers. So if you're if you know what your loyal customers look like, you can actually segment them, tell Google who they are, and say, Google, find, show my ads to people who look like my most loyal customers. That's just an awesome little thing you can do to increase your acquisition efforts. So, I get pretty excited about that one because it's so straightforward and it works so well. But if you want to go a little further, target your loyal customers with an exclusive special offer, right? So instead of treating them the same way as everybody else, make them feel a little special. Maybe you have a sale that's exclusive to loyal customers. You don't have to have a loyalty program to do this. You just have to know who your shoppers are and how many times they've purchased. If you don't already have your own definition for a loyal customer, I recommend you just start by targeting those who have made like 3 or more purchases from you. That's typically what we recommend as a starting place.
Yeah, and what Eric was mentioning in terms of like the lookalike, if you're creating audience lists in AdWords, and you'll see that Google will automatically create like a similar list as well, that's an option. And there's also options when you do create your marketing of how aggressive their targeting is. If you guys are curious of kind of how to set that up or where to see that within the AdWords interface.
Yeah, and Jason and Eric, this is actually a question that we received a lot in the past, and actually something that I'm kind of curious as to as well. I know that there's a lot of statistics out there that say that obviously it's easy to acquire or to turn customers that have purchased from you to kind of repeat purchasers as opposed to acquiring net new customers. So I want to know, is there a specific strategy that you approach or the way that you approach maybe targeting these one purchasers maybe a little bit more aggressively in campaigns? Jason, is that something that we've done in the past, or Eric, I'd love to kind of get your insight into that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just go real quick. I mean, it's definitely something that we look at. I'd still probably say we still lean a lot towards like cart abandonment on AdWords and other engagement rates, but we have been kind of dabbling in that. We do see that if we can get users who have purchased in the past, there's potentially that trust that they've they've worked with us before, they purchased our product, and hopefully they liked our product and service, and there's a high probability they're going to come back and convert again. So usually I'd recommend everyone to create remarketing lists around that, or as Eric said, if you have these lists and engagements available, uploading them via email and using them that way as an RLSA to begin with, and then potentially at some point down the line, target and bid campaigns to kind of take those one purchase users and turn them into repeat, and hopefully down the line as well into loyal customers.
Yeah, now I'll add to that. I encourage any business to really focus on those one-time purchasers. There's a ton of data out there. If you can get that one-time purchaser to make their second purchase, the likelihood of them becoming loyal just goes through the roof. So if you're going to focus on one lifecycle segment to just throw everything you've got at it, I mean, ideally you're doing it in a smart way. You understand what's driving second purchase most often and employing that tactic whenever you can. But getting that one purchaser to make their second purchase is probably the biggest single conversion point in the life cycle. So everything that Jason's talked about and beyond when it comes to messaging, emails, push messaging, etc., leverage whatever you can to focus on that area.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and really love your insight there, Eric. Thanks, guys.
Cool. All right, so next we're going to talk, and this is an extension really of Lifecycle, but unengaged segments. So here we're focusing on customers who have been inactive for extended periods of time or churned, and those who are at risk of churning. If you don't already have your own definition of an at-risk or churn customer, start, at least for the churn segment, a lot of customers that I've worked with start by creating a segment of customers who have previously made a purchase but haven't engaged with your brand or any of your marketing communications whatsoever in the last 60, 90 days. Really, it depends on the business. Like if you're selling products that are higher value and there's less frequency of purchase, you really want to figure out what that time frame is for you. But if you're just looking for a starting point, try 60 days. And let's consider them your churn customer segment. The good news is that you likely have a lot of data on your churn customers. They've purchased from you before, maybe multiple times. So probably browsed your site a bunch of times. So I recommend, whenever possible, personalizing your messages that you send to them. And I love when companies address the elephant in the room head on. The elephant in the room being that, your relationship, let's say, is at risk or it has gone south. So I love this one from Dollar Shave Club where they employ humor to address the elephant in the room. And then let's say I don't know for sure, but these razors that they're showing could be razors that the customer had purchased in the past or shown interest in. So anytime you can personalize, make it lighthearted. You want to draw people back in, so you don't want to be too serious about it. But yeah, that's a great place to start. And then at risk, I loved what you said, Jason, about looking at your unsubscribes and targeting them via Google. That's that's an awesome way to leverage another channel of communication to communicate. So yeah.
Yep.
Cool. So next I've got two more. We're going to talk about time specific segments. So this is the fourth one we'll talk about. Cover it pretty quickly. Two simple examples that I'll talk about are product replenishment and seasonality. So for example, if you sell products that have a predictable lifespan, like say a 60 count bottle of vitamins, you may want to create a segment of every person who bought those vitamins in the month of May and target them with an ad or message in early July, reminding them to purchase another bottle. This is something that a lot of your customers will see as helpful. And for you, you know that they've purchased the product, the life cycle of that product, assuming they're taking their vitamins every day. It's a great opportunity to really drive that repeat purchase. When it comes to seasonality, you may have customers that have shown patterns of only making purchases, let's say in the summer. And in this case, I'd recommend, obviously you want to get them to purchase in other seasons, but definitely recommend creating a segment of those customers and making sure that every spring you're reminding them of your new lines of summer products, whatever it is you sell, right? So your business may not have seasonally related products, but if it does, anytime you can use time of year or lifespan of a product to create segments and better tailor your communications to them, you should definitely encourage you to do that. And the last one I'll talk about is upsell segments. So really about selling across categories and pairing similar items. So there are a lot of ways that you can use segments of people who have purchased certain categories, but the best one that I've seen is when you have a great understanding of the purchase patterns of your customers. This can really be super powerful, especially when it comes to driving that repeat purchase and especially a higher lifetime value. We've heard from our customers that really the key to driving higher lifetime value has been, especially for those who have multi-categories of products, that if you can get customers to purchase from multiple product categories, that's really the key. You could have a person who comes and buys shoes from you every year, but a lot of our customers, for example, wouldn't consider them a loyal customer. They're only a loyal customer if they're purchasing multiple categories of products from you. So in this case, for example, you may know that shoppers who purchase cleaning products are highly likely to also purchase shoes. There are all sorts of bizarre correlations of cross-category shopping. This one is not the most bizarre I've seen. But if you know this through looking at your customers' shopping behavior, I'd recommend you create a segment of customers who have purchased cleaning products and then serve them ads and messages that feature shoes. You're going to have a higher likelihood of driving that repeat purchase than you would have if you did not employ this strategy. And you're going to start developing some loyalty to your store, your brand, because they will be purchasing from multiple categories. And like I said, lots of evidence out there to show that that's really a key factor in driving loyalty and lifetime value.
Yeah, that's super interesting. That's definitely, at least on my end, that's not something I'm looking at currently, and that's a real eye opener for me to understand that, because obviously we can create remarketing lists in AdWords, for example, around a certain category. But if we know that propensity of one category makes a user purchase another category or search for another category, I think that could be huge. So that's definitely something I want to look into more, Eric. That's awesome.
Yeah, and there are lots of lots of personalization or recommendation engines out
Hmm.
there that do a decent job at this, but I would say there is no substitute for you as a marketer or as an analyst diving into your customer data and figuring out these patterns that just seem that there are a lot of unexpected patterns that for
Yeah.
whatever reason these recommendation engines will pick up. Um, uh, when you can find these your own on your own by going into the data yourself, it's going to make you a lot smarter and a lot more effective.
Definitely.
Cool. So that does it for me.
Yeah, great. And actually, before we do hop into the common mistakes section, I know we have a question from Ellen. And Jason, this might be more of a question geared towards you. But
Okay.
Eric, obviously, if you have some insight, would love to hear it from yourself as well. But I know we mentioned lookalike and lookalike concepts. I think it was on the second or third segment that we had introduced. But she was wondering for the lookalike concept, if she's creating an audience list using her most loyal customers and then asking Google to find, people that look similar or an audience that looks similar to that, will Google not serve up the ad to those people on the original customer list, or is it going to be inclusive of those people and create, and
Right.
showcase ads for them as well?
Yeah, usually they're two separate lists. So they'll have one where this is your actual list of, say, emails or whatever you happen to have or whatever list you've created, and then Google will automatically create a similar audience. And it's pretty similar on Facebook as well, but you can also create lookalikes yourself. So usually they're two separate lists, and you wouldn't necessarily be including them because they could be performing very different as well. Just because they look alike also doesn't mean that they're going to perform the same. But there's a high, likelihood that you'll see, solid performance from them. So, that's obviously what you want to look at. But usually, again, they're two separate lists, and it's not inclusive of the other.
All righty, great. Thanks, Jason. Hopefully we answered your question there, Ellen. I'll let you go on to this last section here.
Cool. So I want to go through real quick, and again, thanks, Eric. For the audience segments and stuff like that. I've already definitely learned a bit from that. Again, the relationship between two different categories is something I've never even really thought enough about, and so that really opens my eyes. But I want to go through real quickly about common mistakes that we see. Again, this is mostly in AdWords, so but some of these will go across channels in different other areas of remarketing. But real quickly, mistake number one, and this can actually go either way. So creating niche lists or niche lists and audiences that are too small. Um, and this is specifically, as you can see from the screenshot here within AdWords, you need to, from a search standpoint, have at least 1,000 users on that list, and from a display standpoint, at least 100. So it's really understanding your current traffic levels and creating lists that are both on the meaningful side, but also aren't too niche. So in this case, this user doesn't get enough cart abandonment to warrant having a 3 to 7 day split, a 7 to 14, a 30 to 45. In this case, maybe having one that's larger list from 1 to 30 days, 30 to 60, or something like that would have worked better for this client. So understanding the traffic levels that your audience list will get will allow you to not create lists that eventually just really won't amount up to much. Or if you're definitely a newer site or a smaller traffic driver currently, having even things around all visitors or just larger lists in general over larger time frames to open up and start to remarket to those, and then over time as your traffic grows, you can start to segment them more and more. And then, like I said, it can go the other way as well. So creating lists that aren't niche enough and it's just encompassing too much that there's going to be different behaviors within that single list, but you won't be able to actually see them within the campaign performance or the different breakouts because maybe your list is too large. So again, it can go either way there. Mistake number two, and this is something I alluded to a little bit before, especially if you're going to be getting RLSAs up, so the remarketing list for search ads up today or sometime soon. Understand the difference between a target and bid campaign or setup for interested in marketing within AdWords versus a bid only. And if you look at the screenshot here, this is from an actual campaign in AdWords. And you'll see that there's at the very bottom, once you select your remarketing list, and I've selected, you see the ones on the right hand, the pane there, where I've selected 29 lists here. Really 24 lists in this list here. At the bottom, highlighted in that red box, you'll see a target and bid, meaning I only want to show ads to users who fit these remarketing lists versus a bid only. So I want in a bid only, it's something, again, with RLSAs, I recommend getting this up as soon as possible. It will allow you to adjust your bid percentages on just users in that list, but still allow your campaign to be opened up to everyone else who is doing searches for, say, the keywords or products within that campaign. So again, understanding whether you want your campaign to only serve to remarketing list users or be eligible to all users. But I do recommend RLSA usage across all your search and shopping campaigns. Just make sure you're taking a look at this this setting, because it's definitely not fun when you get it set up one night, you look the next day, and like half of your traffic or more is gone because you're using target and bid on accident versus a bid only. In the AdWords editor, just a little tidbit here, in the AdWords editor, it's a little different. It's observation versus targeting. I believe it's targeting, but it's definitely observation versus targeting. Observation would be the bid only, and then targeting would be obviously target and bid. Mistake 3, reluctance to implement lists or bid aggressive on RLSAs. Again, just a reluctance to not use them. I don't want to harp on this too much, but really I do. I want you guys to be using RLSA lists and getting them added to your campaigns, even if it's just to understand more about previous customers or previous users on the site and how they interact with your current campaigns. The way it works is you're obviously not going to be just targeting these users with these ads. What's going to happen is it means when the traffic goes into your RLSA list on a certain campaign, it means that this user who fits, say, a cart abandonment or a product viewer list is on Google and doing searches again related to your keywords or products, meaning they are actively searching. They haven't come directly to you for this. So in order for you to make sure that, obviously they know your brand, they know your service offering, you want to be able to be in front of them again when they're doing relevant searches. And that's what RLSAs allow you to do. So that's obviously a big reason as to why you want to implement these lists. But secondly, bidding aggressive. So it's very easy. And initially, when we started using this, we bid very small percentages up, maybe like 10, 20%, 30%. But some of these lists, again, you saw in the previous example, I was bidding like 250% up on a cart abandonment in the past 3 days. That's obviously a specific list of people who are highly likely to convert and very low on the funnel. But there's opportunities to bid very aggressive for some of these lists that are obviously highly intent based, and then highly has or highly going to convert your campaigns are these users. So it's definitely something I recommend testing out higher bids. Again, it doesn't mean that your average CPC will go up 150%, for example. It just means that you're willing to bid up to 150% more for this user. So it puts you higher on within the auction and potentially a higher search impression share for that user on that search. And then secondly, email lists typically perform very well, so do not be afraid to upload these into AdWords. It's something that we've seen very, very good success with recently. And then lastly, mistake number 4, not auditing placement. So especially on dynamic remarketing or display remarketing campaigns, this is obviously users will be able, on the GDN specifically, obviously, when we're looking at placements, on the GDN, there's a particular set of, like, for example, mobile apps that may show up, or just mobile in general, that may not perform very well and collect a lot of traffic. And unless you go to that display or the display tab and look at actual placements, it's very, very easy to miss. And all of a sudden, at 6 in the morning, you'll already have $500 worth of spend. And most of these may be mobile apps or certain sites that maybe you don't want to be showing up on. So not auditing placements is a huge mistake if you're not taking a look at that for your dynamic remarketing or any regular, even standard display remarketing that you have set up that aren't set up to target a specific placement. So definitely keep an eye on that. And again, just to harp on this, it's very easy to ignore mobile and mobile app spend. Again, there is a place for that. I wouldn't recommend just shrugging off mobile apps altogether, but there's a lot that you'll see if you take a look. Mobile apps, particularly for like games. And so that's something that you want to take a look at and potentially even exclude altogether. Or what I typically like to do is create a campaign that doesn't include mobile apps, and then one with much lower bids and different targeting that potentially will include mobile apps. And there's ways to segment that and set that up as well. So that's a huge one as well, to definitely save on spend on some of these placements that just aren't going to perform very well or don't fit the messaging of your brand. I think that's all the mistakes I had for today. Yep,
Yeah, I think
cool.
that's it. And I also want to be aware that we do have just a little bit of time left. So I want to just fly through the recap as there's 3 or 4 questions that I'd love to get to here. So again, we talked through some remarketing options and different ways that you can use AdWords to remarket. And then obviously we talked about just audience segmentation using your first party data, and then 5 just specific audience segments that can be really powerful for you to engage with and use. And you'll see this kind of circle back in the questions that we have coming up. And then we also did address common mistakes that we see. And so before we do move further, though, did want to just throw out an evaluation there. Again, we do have a great retail search team with us at CPC. So I did just chat out a link to our evaluation page. If this is something that you are interested in, unfortunately, we won't be able to get to all the questions today, but did want to give you the opportunity to speak with one of our experts here. And then on that note, before I do pass it off to Zaius, if you do have any last minute questions, be sure to pitch them and we will try to get to them. But Eric, I will throw it over to you. I know that we have this in the handout section, as I mentioned, for you all to reference, but tell us a little bit about this handout that you have for us.
Yeah, I think the best way to sum it up is kind of what I was talking about with segments and campaign ideas during this presentation. It goes into a lot more detail. So addressing specific customer segments with some creative campaign ideas. And this is for really anybody in B2C, but e-commerce marketers will get a especially high level of value out of it. And like Anson said, it's in the handout section, so don't hesitate to download it.
Perfect. And I know we have time, 3 minutes for some quick rapid fire questions. Eric actually did want to just come right back to you. And this might sound like a little bit of a loaded question in a sense, but we do have a question from Rachel who was asking, do you feel like there's ever a time that you maybe shouldn't retarget or shouldn't be remarketing actively?
Yeah, I think if your customers are really, they've been gone a long time and you've really, given it your all with those initial win back and churn customer segments, maybe at some point, and it's probably best for you as a business too to cut your losses there at some point, right? You probably don't want to be targeting people who haven't engaged with you in 3 years. So at that point, you may start to come off as annoying, and perception of your brand is certainly something you want to keep an eye on. Outside of that, some of the real deep personalization can be interpreted by a certain segment of consumers as a bit creepy or over the top. But I think today, if a customer is engaging with you or is engaged with you recently, just go for it. Like, people's expectations are really, so first of all, they're really high when it comes to relevancy of communications, but also their tolerance for personalization and that creepy factor has gone way up, right? Because it's everywhere. So yeah, I think with the exception of those who are very long gone, I think just go for it.
Yeah, and I think what I liked about your presentation, Eric, is that you included a lot of great examples of ways to engage with customers without being creepy. I think the Dollar Shave Club example was a great way, adding a little bit of humor into it. And so, yeah, I definitely agree with you. Hopefully, we were able to answer your question there. Jason, wanted to come right back to you. And so we had a question. So if someone is uploading a list into AdWords, do you know what AdWords kind of matches on initially, is if they have their name, their emails, even the USPS address on some of their prospect lists? Does AdWords prioritize one thing to match on over the other?
I wouldn't say they necessarily prioritize. They will take all of those, but you only really just need an email, even if you wanted to. So if you're afraid of giving too much information to Google, I know people are afraid of that, things like that. Just adding an email, just having a column with email works just fine. But they do accept name, number, address.
Gotcha. All righty. Hopefully we answered your question there. Eric, want you to round us out. We are at the top of the hour now. I know you talked about the 5 audience segments, and Brendan was actually asking, is there an audience segment that you would recommend working on first that maybe has the opportunity to move the needle around the most? I think the first thing that pops into my head was probably those first-time customers, and hopefully trying to get them to be repeat customers would be my guess, but would love to get your insight there.
Yeah, it's either that one. So definitely in terms of business strategy, if if you can drive more of those second purchases, it's really going to move the needle for your business. So focus there. But when it comes to low-hanging fruit, a lot of our customers start off with their unengaged customer segments. So people who you haven't talked to in 60, 90 days, or haven't actively engaged with you, or even reactively opened an email or anything like that. Those customers, that's low-hanging fruit. So if you can go after those segments, re-engage them, that can be a really effective way to start.
Sounds good. So to answer your question, obviously first, purchases to returning purchases, and then obviously, like you said as well, the unengaged segments would be low-hanging fruit there. So hopefully we answered your question. That does wrap it up for our Q&A today. I did want to just thank both Eric and Jason for taking time to speak with us today, and also wanted to thank all the audience members that stuck it out with us for the full hour. We know that an hour of your time is something that we don't take lightly. So thank you so much for spending it with us. With that being said, though, wanted to wrap up today's presentation. That's really all that we have from both CPC Strategy and Zaius. Hoping you tune in to some of our future CPC Strategy hosted webinars. But from sunny San Diego, we are signing out. This is CPC Strategy.